start tonight and continue into our investigation in Babylon as we are looking into just the consistent practices they've always had since the Tower of Babel, because it's a part of the occult, right? It's a part of their religion. And so for many of you that remember, we've already done several episodes already from the past, and now we're midway into our present series where we're investigating everything about Babylon from the present. And then we're also going to be jumping into the future here in a few episodes. For a lot of you that have been asking, yes, we are going to be covering during our present series, we are going to be covering an entire episode just on NASA, because that's a huge component piece of deception in this world, because that's the model by which other countries have adopted that same part of deception and are propagating to their cultures and their people. So we're definitely going to spend a lot of time, an entire episode just on NASA. And I think it's 2 episodes from now. It's either 13 or 14. I got it planned. So be looking out for that. All right, guys. So look, Babylon. It's, like I said before, it's kind of quick and ink. Why did the European Union develop their headquarters to literally look like the classical depiction of the Tower of Babel? And they also are unifying with a very atheistic style government, right? So it's pretty much the Europe's version of the United Nations, basically. But let's jump in. We already looked at, well, let me go back and show the title image real quick. We already looked at last episode, so that's going to be part 10. We looked at collectivistic authoritarianism, and then we also looked at warfare and about how those two concepts are perpetually used in order to control people. It's like those are the, in my opinion, the top 2 ways that they try to control cultures and nations and people, through philosophical indoctrination to get them to reject God out of their own courage to think they're doing well. And then through warfare, they bring in subjugation because they create lack, poverty, necessity, despair. They also create dichotomies by which people can fight. So there's different types of warfare. A lot of people would say that we're actually engaged in what's called 4th generational warfare right now, which is not exactly a warfare that's necessarily perpetrated by the firing of cannons or tanks or guns, but it's done through social media. It's done through the information warfares. But this week, we're going to be looking at sorcery, child sacrifice, and weather control, and how that is played out into their schemes, their machinations that they try to impose upon the people across the earth, to get people to stop believing in the Creator, to stop having hope for what the Creator says we should hope in. And that's, if you steal someone's hope, you've taken their energy, basically. Genetic sorcery, made it into a different image. So we're going to be looking at how they're mixing species and changing orders together. Now, many of you guys, if it's your first time watching, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. But if you've been with us for quite some time, we've covered a couple of these verses before, but hopefully, as you see, as it all comes together, hopefully it'll be that much more pertinent. So in 1 Enoch 7, 1-6, it talks about all the others together with him. This is the rebellious angels. This is angels that, according to Jubilees, they were commissioned to come down and help mankind, but while they were down here, they fell into their own temptation and decided to do some things against their commission, against their orders for coming down to the earth plane. And instead, they took matters into their own hands and became rebellious. And it says, all the others together with him took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself, and they began to go into them and to defile them, to defile themselves with them. And they taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. And they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. And they began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. So there's a couple things I want to point out here too. Well, the first thing I like to say is if you're just jumping into the middle of this series, again, we're in part 11. So go back to part 3. I do an entire episode on the Nephilim and the giants. So I think you'll really enjoy that. We look at history. We look at, all the different mentions and things like, well, not all of them, but lots of different mentions throughout history of this concept. So as we're kind of prefacing with some of these same verses again in this one, because we're going to be leading to something. I just want to point out here, there's 2 concepts here. The genetic mutilation of the cutting of roots and becoming acquainted with plants, as I talked about in episode 3, or part 3, I should say. This is literally a part of gene splicing. This is manipulating the growth hormones inside the roots of trees and plants. And I go over that in great depth in that part. So in part 3, go check that out. But then also at the bottom there, it says they begin to sin against the birds, the beasts, the reptiles, and the fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Now, guys, this is not saying they suddenly became meat eaters. All right. I've tried to show emphatically multiple podcasts in the past. I did 2 different podcasts on veganism, and I go through the scriptures and I show that mankind, that's Adam himself, as well as the angels, have been eating meat since day one of creation, because it's literally a part of how the creation was designed. It's a part of the eternal feasts that are kept in heaven and instructed for men to practice on the earth. And it's just a part of how everything was designed. This is talking differently. This is talking about a version of cannibalism that you do with actual occult rituals. This is why it includes, and they drank the blood. Okay, because this isn't just about them becoming, meat eaters. They were already meat eaters. Everyone was already carnivorous since creation began. This is a cult ritual that it's mentioning. And then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. I think this is interesting because way back in the days of Enoch, we're seeing an eternal Torah principle that the Father's creation, everything that he made, is supposed to work with our behavior. So when our behavior is out of line, that creation will buck back against us. Just like, I can't remember the exact, oh man, I can't remember this. It's in the book of Sirach, I believe. I want to say it's like Sirach 43:5, but there's it just talks about how the creation will relax on behalf of those who are doing the behavior of God, doing the commandments, the righteous people, but it actually will kick against those who are unrighteous. So that's kind of that same principle, that eternal Torah principle that the Father built into creation, we're seeing that being mentioned here in 1 Enoch 7, verse 6. So we got things like the Nephilim, which is what we're looking at here on screen. This is what's being highlighted in this piece of context in 1 Enoch 7. It's their origins of where did the Nephilim, which are the sons of these rebellious angels taking wives, where did they come from? Well, it's telling us here in 1 Enoch 7. Also, as you see the parallel verses at the bottom, it's also in Jubilees chapter 7, and then also Genesis 6. Jubilees 7, 21 through 24. So it says, "For owing to these 3 things came the flood upon the earth, namely owing to the fornication, wherein the watchers against the law of their ordinances went whoring after the daughters of men, took themselves wives of all which they chose, and they made the beginning of uncleanness." What does that mean? That is the unclean spirits. That's the children they had. That's why they're called unclean spirits after they lose their bodies in the flood. The spirits that are left, which are the disembodied spirits of these children, of this hybrid union, of this marriage, they're called unclean spirits. And then it says they begat sons, the Nephilim. That's just a Greek transliteration for the Nephilim, and they were all unlike. They devoured one another. The giants slew the Nephil slew the Eljo, and the Eljo slew mankind, and then mankind slew one another. And everyone sold himself to work iniquity and to shed much blood, and the earth was filled with iniquity. After this, they sinned against the birds and the beasts, and all that moves and walks on the earth, which much blood was shed on the earth. And every imagination and desire of men imagined vanity and evil continually. So this is a mixture of what we read in Enoch, as well as Genesis 6, Jubilees 7. It kind of like gives you all those elements together of these descriptions of the Enoch 7 and Genesis 6. So this is why we have in Genesis 6 the same type of description here in verses 4 and 5. It says, "There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bore them children, the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually." Then on down in verses 11 and 12, it says, "The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth." So this is why I drew out from 1 Enoch 7:6, where it says the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. This is why I took a moment to focus on that for you to pay attention to, because that's also what we're seeing in Genesis 6:12. It's the same concept that it's like we see in that the verse that we've taught in church, right? Which is I believe it's 2 Chronicles 7:14, that if you would turn from your wicked ways and seek my face, I would heal your land. The earth will spew out wickedness. It's not designed, otherwise it becomes corrupted and destroyed. So this is a part of natural judgment that's built into the creation model, right? You can't act unbecoming of where you were supposed to live. Like your behavior is supposed to match where you live, and if it doesn't match, you get spewed out. Adam and Eve, their behavior didn't match what was required of them, or they were living in the special Garden of Eden environment. They were spewed out. So there's nowhere else to get spewed out once you're on the earth plane. So therefore, you just go to Sheol because you're going to die in some kind of disaster, judgment of some sort. So this is what was going on, and this is why in 1 Enoch 85 you also see Noah. Noah has this incredible dream where the earth is topographically is shifting like crazy. Huge parts are sunken down, other parts are raising up. They wonder why they see, they claim they see entire pyramid structures in the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, which is almost, it's really, really far down, and there's no mountains anywhere around. Well, some people think that part of the land used to be more up above sea level, because they don't think there's no actual active use of an underground pyramid of any kind, or a complex that's actually down there. So they think it's a place that had been sunken down over time. I would suggest 100% the flood of Noah. So there's places all across the world like that where you can see evidence of a mass flood. And so this is why the earth gets upset. It doesn't like the way the Father designed it. It doesn't work with unrighteous behavior. So this is where you get this feigned Gaia worship Gaia worship, philosophical, religious push from the enemy that wants to get people away from the Creator, but worshiping the creation. And they call it Mother Earth, right? Mothership Earth, or Gaia, or whatever they want to call it, because it's literally a perversion of this principle in Scripture, which is to do the behavior of the Creator, and the creation He made for you will work really, really well for you, even to the point of going to, relaxing against some of its natural inclinations and orders. For example, letting Yeshua walk on water. So that's the beautiful creation that He put us in. If only we would do His behavior, we can enjoy it a lot more. So that's why it's our discipling. It's our responsibility as believers in the Creator and His Son, and as disciples of Yeshua, that we try to practice that behavior of the Father and the Son better and better in our life. And, we enjoy life all that much more in a variety of ways. So we'll keep going here. This is evidence all across the world of giants. Here's just some imprint in a big rock. That's a big toe. Not the actual guys, but the imprint in the rock. That's a huge big toe, as you can see there. Do you guys understand what makes a big imprint in rock like that? I would say it's because this rock actually was undergoing some serious change during the events of the flood. So it's interesting, huh? We also have underwater things all over the earth. They've been finding massive evidences of giants everywhere, of weapons, swords, as you can see, like a huge knife right here. They found all kinds of concepts in North America, even, of copper shields that were fit for 8 and 9 foot giants. And then, of course, the guy on the right, he is also looking at a unique stone that has a huge giant footprint in it, the size of his body. These are just different things all across the earth where we can see these different ideas. So we go into genetic sorcery to the aspect of eating and drinking blood. So this is where it gets really interesting, because this is what was happening, like I said, in 1 Enoch 7, that's being mentioned also in Jubilee 7. This is the consistent practices throughout all of life. The moment that the idolatry set in with the Nephilim being born, and then those sons, the Nephilim, being propagated as little g gods, as rulers over the people to be worshipped. And a part of their worship, which was antithetical to worshiping the Creator, to worshiping Yahweh, the Nephilim before the flood required worship of themselves. They then, of course, instituted these practices of worship, which were basically the opposite of what Yahweh asked for. Some of that was eating and drinking blood, cannibalism of different types. So in Genesis 9:4, after Noah gets off the boat, he and his son are given the command once again, hey, by the way, only you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood in it. Just as a basic reminder for you and your sons and daughters, Noah, we can't do this behavior that led to all this mass horrible stuff of the flood. You just got off the boat for a year. So Leviticus 19:26, Yahweh instructs them, don't eat anything with blood, nor practice divination. That's enchantments. That's what we read in 1 Enoch 7. And then he also says, and also don't do soothsaying, which some translations would say, looking at the orders of the stars, different things, and different types of soothsaying. So the same thing with Leviticus 19. I put some of these in here, but just to give, I guess, people a little sneak peek idea of stuff I've worked on over time. So this is one where inside these instructions of the Torah in Leviticus 19:26 through 29 and 26 through 30, verse 31, there is a mention of Nephilim, because that is what the familiar spirits, or some translations say the unclean spirits, that's what the wizards and the witches would be consulting through the teraphim, through the idolatry, the mediums, the necromancers. That's who they're trying to contact. And so all of it is in the context of Nephilim. Acts 15:20. This is the disciples expressing to Paul and Barnabas some instructions how to disciple new converts. And he says, this is actually James speaking, where he says, but that we write to them, that's the new converts, write to them that they abstain from things contained by idols, and from fornication, and from what's strangled, and from blood. So guys, he's just listing off a whole bunch of Torah when he says that. It's 4 different places from Torah. Those are actual Torah commands. I have that here, as you can see, listed in Acts 15. I then have the supplementary verses for where those are found down below. And then also actually have a moment of agency, because he actually sends Paul out to take this message to the non-converts under the authority of James, the leader of the disciples in Jerusalem. So just kind of go over to all the different ideas of the context tree. But guys, this is in modern times. We have Lady Gaga on the left, and then right next to her, the lady in all black with the black hair, as well as Marina Abramovic, I think that's how you say her name. So she's actually a self-proclaimed witch. She actually is, rubs shoulders, as you can see, literally, and elbows with a lot of Hollywood elites, as well as a lot of politicians, high-profile politicians. And this is them at some particular party that was set up where they're not actually doing cannibalism, but they set it up to make it look like they were. So it was basically a ritual that they were doing, and they invited a bunch of Hollywood guests to show up. And then, of course, people started taking pictures because it's just not normal, right? And actually, I had to black out at the bottom there some of the nudity. So this is a model they have laying in a tub that's supposed to be looking like a tub full of blood, so they can practice this ritual. And so this is this woman. She's been around for quite a long time. She's met with all types of high-profile people. This is some of her poetry that she likes to put out to the world. And literally, I'll let you read the poetry yourself because I don't want YouTube to flag this. But at the same time, the poetry is basically encouraging cannibalism. It's encouraging the drinking of blood. So this is what the occult does. This is what witches do. Yeah, Earl Rogers. It's called spirit cooking is the term I guess a lot of people might have heard about them acting like they're actually doing cannibalism. And you know what? I wouldn't actually put it past them if they actually were doing cannibalism and then just said they weren't, right? And then the media is not going to tell on them because they're complicit in that kind of stuff. Depends on who's there taking the pictures. So this is a little example here. Obviously, she's all about abortion. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And it's a huge component piece of the occult. And so these are other pictures associated with her on her profile and her website, different things like that. She's met with all types of people across the world, including the Rothschilds and Bill Gates. She actually did a Microsoft ad, as you can see on the right-hand side. That's a picture from the specific ad that got a lot of backlash last year, back in like late spring, early summer, where people literally were like, this is crazy. How in the world? Like, they know who she is. The average public did. And they saw her doing this Microsoft ad, and they're like, how in the world could Microsoft employ this lady? This is crazy. Well, it's because the owner is definitely neck deep in all these practices. This is why this dude's a eugenicist, whose father was a eugenicist. This is why this guy is a part of the depopulation crowd. It's completely a demonic agenda. Here she is with one of the Rothschilds. And this is actually something, because we're talking about the idea of eating and drinking blood, right? This idea of the occult practices of Babylon that are pushed upon the cultures and the people. Now, history, the nation of India has a long history of this type of behavior. So this is a reporter in modern times. This has just happened like 3 or 4 months ago. A CNN reporter went over to India to do this story about this remote Hindu tribe that actually were cannibalistic tribes. And as you can see in the pictures, during the interview on live TV, they coax this guy to actually eat human brain. And he does it. And of course, CNN got backlash for that, but they don't care because they're being funded by people who've got plenty of money. They don't care about viewership funding or advertising money. And they're going to try to push this stuff on the people because they want that shock value, and they want people to be exposed to this type of behavior so they can normalize it. As I tried to explain several months ago when I did an episode about communism is the religion of Babylon, and I talked about a lady named Alice Bailey, from the 1920s. She was part of the Lucius Trust. It's a council that is counseling the United Nations still to this day. She was a eugenicist also, and a part of that mentality and that mindset was what she agreed with the book that was put out by the other eugenicist. I can't think of her name right now. My wife, if she's in the chat, she definitely remember her name. But it's called the externalization of the hierarchy. So the hierarchy is the occult hierarchy of how they do these rituals and practices. And back in the early 20th century, there was a group of eugenicists that they said, now in the 20th century and beyond, now is the time when we are going to externalize the hierarchy. Their plan over time, systematically, is to externalize all the stuff they've been doing for hundreds of years privately and underground. They're going to bring it out into the public so the public can be more readily accepted by the public. Basically, guys, there's nothing new under the sun. They're trying to get it back to being done outdoors and in the open, just like we would read in the scriptures, where they would have these festivals to Baal and Molech outdoors and in the open, and where they practice all these same things. So this is a part of their agenda. So this is a BBC, guys. We all know the BBC publication. This is their online news. All right, it says, in major cities around the world, communities of ordinary people, nurses, bar staff, secretaries, etc., are drinking human blood on a regular basis. The question is, why? In the French Quarter of New Orleans, John Edgar Browning is about to take part in a feeding. It begins as clinically as a medical procedure. His acquaintances first swab a small patch on Brown's upper back with alcohol. He then punctures it with a disposable hobby scalpel and squeezes until the blood starts flowing. Lowering his lip to the wound, Browning's associates now start lapping up the wine-dark liquid. He drank it a few times, then cleaned and bandaged me, Browning says today. To Browning's bemusement, he was not quite to his host's tastes. He said, my blood was not as metallic as it should have been, so he was a little disappointed. I'm not going to read the rest of this, guys. It's crazy, right? This is crazy stuff. Right? These are literally just vampiric style special interest groups but this is not just in New Orleans. It's all around the world, right? So here we have part of this. He says, there are thousands of people doing this just in the U.S. alone. I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't think it's a fad, says Browning. Their symptoms and behaviors are a genuine mystery. It's a mystery. No, it's not. It's been going on since the Tower of Babel and way before that, actually. So the so-called medical sanguinarians, it's hilarious, claim that the regular shots of blood relieve them of fatigue, headaches, and severe stomach pain. Lies. All right. It goes on to say, for many, real-life vampirism is a taboo. Over the last few decades, it's come to be associated with gruesome murders, such as the notorious case of Rod Ferrell in the U.S., a deluded killer apparently inspired by a fantasy role-playing game. When people talk about self-identified vampires, a lot of times these people imagine a lot of these horrible images come to mind, says Dr. D.J. Williams, a sociologist at Idaho State University. So the community has been closed and suspicious of outsiders. You don't think. How is this even legal? I don't even understand how it's even legal, to be honest with you. You guys can read it if you want. As far as the full thing, I'm just kind of hitting some of the highlights here just to show you that this is not me just taking a couple pictures from some inflammatory celebrities who are having a crazy party and want to get in the news and have some shocking photos. Like these are people, we'll never know their names, that are going to clubs in different cities around the world, privately practicing vampiric practices. And that word vampire has this modern connotation of stupid movies, right? But it's literally what we've been reading from First Enoch, the practices of the Nephilim. This is practices of the occult, practices of Babylon. So yeah, it's pretty crazy, y'all. He goes on to say, and yet the practices seem to have lived on among a small group of people. Before the age of the internet, they were largely isolated, but through dedicated web pages, they've now forged thriving underground networks. And from what we can tell, most major cities across the world seem to have a vampire community. It's crazy, guys. It's crazy. Yeah, there's no coincidence, in my opinion, why you have continual vampire movies and TV shows continually being created. Yeah, they claim it renews vitality, which is just hilarious. You actually get extra special diseases if you drink blood. You're not supposed to do it. I think that's all. I mean, you're getting the point. I think that's all that I really wanted to get out of this. It's not cool. Not cool. It's an entire thing. It's an entire subcommunity. Again, because they feel it's okay. Clearly, no one is going in and arresting these people because these are well known enough for a reporter to actually interview them and do entire write-ups on them, which is just insane. So yeah, that's happening all around the world. Zechariah 9:7. I'll take away his blood out of his mouth. This is Yahweh speaking to people during the days of Zechariah and Isaiah, talking about the rebellious people in Israel who are practicing the practices of Babylon. Because remember, Israel, both through multiple kings, specifically during the days of Isaiah, through Manasseh, they had went reprobate and they started doing the practices of Babylon, right? Which is worshiping the Baals, the Molechs, engaging in these behaviors we've been describing. And this is why there's immediately chaos in Israel, and Yahweh's not happy. So through the prophet Isaiah in chapter 9, verse 7, he says, I will take away his blood out of his mouth and his abominations from between his teeth. That's him doing cannibalistic rituals. But he that remains, even he shall be for our Elohim, our God, and he shall be as a governor in Judah and Ekron as a Jebusite. You have to read the fuller context. It's Yahweh, while he's saying, I'm going to bring judgment and punishment, I'm also going to have a remnant that's here as well. So just go ahead and read the full context later. But that was the idea of that part of the genetic sorcery, where there's people actually doing the practices of Baal, eating and drinking blood. This is consistent, guys. We're seeing this same thing happen. I mean, literally off the boat, Noah's being told, don't do this behavior. And we're seeing it today, thousands of years later. Nothing's new under the sun. Genetic sorcery, made in a different image. Inoculations and vaccines. Oh, it gets worse. We're not done, guys. Did you guys know that inoculations is the original word before vaccines popped up? Inoculations are a little bit different concept than vaccines, but it's the same premise. It's the same underpinning movement, if you will, which is literally mysticism. It's literally witchcraft, guys. I'm just letting you know. It's not even like, so I'll go ahead and read what's on screen here. This is actually from about ancient China and how they did inoculations. So it says several accounts from the 1500s describe smallpox inoculations as practiced in China and India. This is The Life and Death of Smallpox notes that in the late 1600s, Emperor Kongzi, who had survived smallpox as a child, had his children inoculated. That method involved grinding up smallpox scabs and blowing the matter into the nostril. So I want you to think about what I just read, guys. Their version of inoculation was to take the scab that would be result. You guys, you know what that means? That is the unclean material, and then they're gonna make it into a substance to actually make someone ingest it again. That is literally witchcraft. Like it's not even, oh, it could be feigned as medical science. No. Like that's just straight up, let's take a scab and let's make a potion with it and make someone take it. Like that's witchcraft. Might as well throw in a hare and a frog. Inoculation may also have been practiced by scratching matter from a smallpox sore into the skin. What did God say in Leviticus 13 and 14 about those who develop scabs and that would be inspected by the priest and then they're quarantined for 7 days and then they're, you know what I'm saying? So they could be healed, taken away from it. Instead of, they're literally taking the sick, taking their literal physical sicknesses on their skin and trying to spread them to other people. Like this is this ridiculous mentality we still see today in the VAXX movement, right? Which is this idea of that, oh, your shot doesn't work unless everyone around you has a shot. Guys, this is a spiritual battle. This is a spiritual battle we're talking about. So as you can see at the bottom here, it says it is difficult to pinpoint when the practices began, as some sources claim dates as early as 200 BCE. And guys, I'm going to tell you that's probably much, much later than it really happened. Because like I said, we're literally talking about wizards, like we read from the previous passage in Leviticus 19, wizards and warlocks and witches and people that are practicing the occult, right? In 1 Samuel, we see that Saul goes to the witch of Endor. Their practices were well known. It's Babylon, right? The priest of Babylon, may as well just call him a wizard. They're the same thing. Same thing for the priest of Egypt, the priest of Greece, as a part of the Apollyon cult. Same thing for the Osiris cult, those priests, all doing the same practices. You guys, I don't have the information on screen, but some of you may have already seen people that have already done in-depth breakdowns of well-documented historical Egyptian information about some of their medical practices. And it's the most unclean thing you can imagine. They're literally like, let's get your poop and let's figure out creative ways to put my poop on you. Like it's just literally the perverseness and the reverseness of logic and health. It's everything away from Yahweh. And instead, this is what they're claiming medicine in the occult. Why? Because the whole point is to kill you. And they got to convince you to do these things so that you kill yourself so they can avoid immediate judgment. So this is the deception of the occult. So in the 18th century, inoculation was a practice largely confined to China and India and Turkey and other Eastern countries, except for when this lady in England, she claims, or history claims, that Lady Mary Montagu was an aristocrat and a wife of England's ambassador to Turkey. She's credited as being the first to bring attention to the practice in the Western world. And she quotes saying that the smallpox was so fatal and so general among us, that is in Turkey, where she lived, entirely harmless by the invention of inoculation. She's claiming that once we started inoculating people, then smallpox almost went away. Montague wrote to a friend. By the way, guys, I would challenge anyone who actually believes these narratives to also look at as they claim inoculations, which leads into the VAXXs, that they claim that has caused diseases to go away. Do a historical search as far as our cleanliness habits, as far as our social I can't think of the word right now, how our sewage has gotten better, our sewage systems during that same period of time, how our cleanliness habits as far as individuals and families, and the general understanding of remaining clean at different times, and how that has increased throughout all these cultures at the very same time. Meanwhile, they're claiming it's due to this nonsense, this witchcraft. This is what the enemy does. It wants to take credit for something that's, when the Father is trying to give to the cultures and the nations how to become clean, how to remain clean to the point where you avoid sickness. Yeah, they're just like, no, rub some scab on you. It says, and then she quotes this lady from the 18th century in Turkey. This English woman quotes that there is a set of old women who make it their business. Think about this for a minute. They make it their business to perform the operation every autumn. The operation of what? To go around and inoculate all the kids for smallpox. These are not hired nurses by the state of Turkey or by the imam or whoever ruled Turkey at that time. This is not a government idea. This is 3 old women who've made it their business to perform the operation every autumn. And the old women come with a nutshell full of the matter of the best sort of smallpox and ask what veins you please to have opened. This is crazy. Of course, this is the 18th century, so we're talking about the 1700s, the same time period where it was common practice for bloodletting, another ridiculously occultic practice that they claimed was actual medicine. Right? Think about it. Supposedly that's what George Washington died, right? He got sick. They did some bloodletting and he bled out too much. They called that medicine. These are occult practices. All I want to say is, guys, this is the same stuff we see today. They're taking witchcraft, they package it, and then they promote it as this is good for you. This is healthy. This is medicine. This is accepted science. You should believe us. Oh yeah, of course you want to change your DNA so you can't get sick anymore, but nothing's going to go wrong with you. You'll be fine. Yeah. Because, this is science. Do no harm, except for the point where you harm people with your unnatural science, which is against actual nature, and try to change someone's natural, God-given, healthy born DNA to something else. Oh, you don't want to take it? That's fine. You can do that until we decide that you can't buy, sell, or work, or do anything, or travel, go across state lines to, unless you're safe like us and accept the medical science, which we tell you is, no, it hasn't been tested. No, it hasn't been approved by any regulatory agency. No, it hasn't had any kind of independent verification on whether it actually works or has any long-term studies. But, we created it, so we need you to take it because it's good for you. This is healthy. They'll literally stare you in the eye and look at you and say they've been doing it for about 12 months now. This is the occult, guys. This is what you're dealing with. You're not just dealing with a confused politician. You're dealing with huge forces ruled by unclean spirits that rule over the nations that are pushing the propaganda through the mouths of the puppets. And I know that sounds a little jaded, but show me someone that has in a position of power that has the consciousness to stand up against this type of literal and obvious witchcraft. It's not even hidden very well, to be honest with you. This is vaccines contain aborted fetal tissue. Do they? Yes, they do. Let me make it. I can't make it bigger. I thought it was bigger, but this is medically reviewed by a doctor, Jonathan Jesse. This is from January 26th of this year. This is just a month ago. And this is a part of verywellhealth.com where they literally acknowledge to you that yes, modern vaccines do have aborted fetal cell tissues. And it's in these particular vaccines of hepatitis A, rabies, rubella, shingles, and varicella, which is chickenpox vaccine. Yeah. So you want to also, instead of just putting scabs inside you, how about you're going to put another human DNA inside you from an aborted baby. It's horrible. This is literally the same as them. This is just a more white coat sterilized version of what they would do back in the day with Bill, where they would, and I'm actually going to show you the tools of abortion in a few minutes from ancient Rome. They've actually found in archaeological digs the actual tools that they practiced abortion in Rome. And so what they would do as they were sitting at the temple in Rome to Zeus or Jupiter or Apollo, and they would do an abortion, part of the occultic ritual, and they would practice cannibalism with the child. So it's horrible, guys. This is horrible. This is why James in the very, Paul and Barnabas come to James and Peter and the other disciples in Jerusalem, and they're in this argument about circumcision, right? And he's like, yeah, okay, well, they'll get to the circumcision. The first thing they need to stop doing is these 4 things, which are the occult rituals, right? Then you stop the fornication that took place at the Baal worship. Then you stop the eating and drinking of blood. Then you need to stop the eating things that are strangled. Then all these things. This was the Baal worship. These are the main things. If they say they profess Christ and believe in Yeshua and want to be grafted into Israel and want to start doing the law of God, well, these are the 4 first most highlighted, most prominent laws of God they need to start practicing immediately to get away from Babylon's practices. And we can deal with circumcision later. Like this is a huge, this is the turn. This is the immediate, obvious sign in your life that you're not worshiping the Baals and you want to worship Yahweh. D-Love, we're going to go over the MRC5, and I mean, there's probably people in the audience that may have a lot more knowledge on this topic than me, because I'm against getting any kind of vaccine. I still have damage. It's superficial, but I was partially paralyzed for a little while when I got an immunization shot when I was a kid. Now I have this scar on my arm as a result of it, and so I'm never going to get that again in my life. And I would encourage anyone within the sound of my voice to look up the research on this and never get one for yourself either. So hopefully what I'm saying tonight is showing you also a case from history and scripture that it's not cool. It's evil. So if we're going to go on here there's also cow. There's bovine material used in vaccines. And this is literally stated, FDA.gov. This is from the website. And it goes on to say that literally bovine animal products are in vaccines. It's a part of the tissue, the growth that they use, as well as the what's it called? I'm going to get to it in just a minute. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the specific word that they use. So also WebMD claims that pig viruses are found in the rotavirus vaccine. So now we have human DNA, human cannibalistic concepts. You have to have animals, both cow and pig, that are going to be put into vaccines. And they're openly admitting it, guys. This is from 2010, March 22nd. Openly admitting it, not even trying to hide it. Guys, this is actually the vaccine excipient summary. This is from cdc.gov. Okay, so this is from the CDC website. This is a list of the since 2019, or I think 2018 to 2020, of the most well used, if you will, the most commonly used vaccines across the country. And this is a list of them here. And I just kind of show you, I didn't, there's small writing, so that's why I put on the left-hand side, just try to highlight some of the extremely toxic things that are in some of these. This is stated on their website. Anyone can find this information. Okay, let me take the overlay off so you guys can see a little bit more of this if you need to. Formaldehyde is in a ton of these. I just want to show you, just in the yellow, just on this page. We're going to have 5 pages to go through. I'll do it quickly, but just to show you that formaldehyde is in a lot of them. I'm not going to focus on the formaldehyde as much as I am the human and animal concepts, but just to let you know, this is an embalming fluid that's in there. Human animal albumin. It's the most abundant plasma protein formed principally in the liver and constituting up to 2/3, up to 6 to 8% protein concentration in the plasma. Albumin is responsible for much of the colloidal osmotic pressure of the blood. Guys, this is literally one of the component pieces of blood. What you guys think about what I just read? When you see this word, albumin, in vaccines, it's literally one of the component pieces of blood. It's one thing to say, oh, Why are you putting blood in a vaccine? No, they've stripped the blood apart and put one of its mechanisms inside the blood to use that because it helps carry things. So they're not just giving you the random blood, they're giving you specifically the most potent part of the blood. It's horrible, guys. And of course, I try to highlight on page 2 of their just how much of that in there. It's in the pink. And then, of course, we also look at in the blue is aborted human fetal cells as well as animal cells, including the MRC5 strain, which it's a diploid cell culture line composed of fibroblasts originally developed from the lung tissue of a 14-week-old aborted Caucasian male fetus. And I think this was from like 30 years ago, but they're still using some of this cell line to create, as you can see, and put in multiple vaccines as well as human and animal. That's why at the top here on the right, I have, it's not just animal on the top right. It's hard to see it, but this is bovine up there at the top. And this is bovine serum albumin. So that's both human and animal mixed in the pink. And then, of course, aborted cells of animals and humans in the blue. Now look at this. This is page 4. And these are all the more, prevalent vaccines for the flu and different types of stuff that, the yellow fever and typhoid and smallpox and rabies and rotavirus and polio and like MMRVs. And like, this is, these are in the most prevalently used vaccines. You've got witchcraft, straight up witchcraft. And then, of course, shingles. Shingles also has aborted human and animal fetal tissues. Everyone sick yet? Yeah. You guys remember that passage? I think it's in Mark. I think it's in Mark 16, where Yeshua says to the disciples, I know there's a lot of contesting about whether this was a part of the original manuscript or not, but there's a unique spot where Yeshua tells the disciples, in my name you'll go out and heal the sick, and you'll be able to go and drink poisons and them not affect you. And I always wondered if is that the Holy Spirit working on my behalf and I don't know it? To the point when I got these poisons put in me when I was a kid, and my arm goes partially numb for, temporarily. Obviously, it came back, but I was temporarily paralyzed for a short amount of time in my right side of my body, my upper chest area of my arm. It left a scarring, like a blood scarring on the top of my arm, but you can't see. You see it really well in the summertime, and if I get any sun on my skin. But like that was poison that went in my body. My body tried to reject it, didn't do well with it. Was that the Holy Spirit helping me? All this other time, like the stuff we eat in our diet and our food, that I know there's a lot of people that do get sick because they're being poisoned from a variety of different ways. And so I just wonder sometimes if that's like how much, and I'll just ask the Father when I get there later, but how much did he help me through his Spirit for caring and look after me and the internal workings of my body, fighting off poisons in this world that are, trying to be given to me by the enemy. And it's just crazy to think about. This is why I always have said over myself, like people would ask me if you can know the date of your death, would you want to know it? And I'd be like, no, I don't care, because I've been praying Acts 23 over myself for a long, long time, which is, I think it's Acts 23. It's that David, until he completed his purpose in his generation, David lived, but then, once he completed his purpose, then he slept, and joined his fathers in Sheol. He died. And so that's what I've prayed over my life since I became a believer. And I read that verse and I was like, yeah, to me, that was just logical. I was like, all right, Father, look, I'm not going to ask to live till I'm 85, but I will say, I want to be here as long as you want me to be here. And I want to be working for you. So whatever that looks like, if I got to be 120 with Moses with no bad eyesight and still got my strength, I'm good with that. But if you need to take me at some other time, because my purpose in my generation has been fulfilled, that's my prayer. So if you got to keep me from being poisoned along the way, even if I don't know it, then I'm just going to trust that you are looking out for me, because you're a good, good Father. So that's been my disposition, like, for a long time, I guess. Genetic sorcery, transhumanism. just in case a lot of people are not aware of this topic, this is a growing topic in the world, not just the United States, but in the world. Transhumanism, it's a philosophical movement, the proponents of which advocate the enhancement of the human condition by developing and making widely available sophisticated technologies able to greatly enhance longevity, mood, and cognitive abilities. Transhumanists, thinkers, study the potential benefits and dangers of emerging technologies that could overcome fundamental human limitations, as well as the ethical limitations of using such technologies. Some transhumanists believe that human beings may eventually be able to transform themselves into beings with abilities so greatly expanded from their current condition as to merit the label of post-human beings. And I promise you guys, all this is fueled by all the modern comic book movies and comic books for the last 40, 50 years. But this movement, this philosophy, that's why it's a philosophical movement, because there's very little science that would back up what they hoped. I take this back. There's science that allows them to get to these points. We're talking about chimeras, hybridization, changing we read about this in 1 Enoch 7, Jubilee 6, Genesis 6, but the goal, the philosophy of where they're trying to go, the end goal of their scientific efforts is the part of this philosophy of the movement, which is they think they can become post-human, better than human, that they can mix and give themselves extra abilities, right? The sight of a dog, the hearing of a dog, the sight of an eagle, the muscle tendons of a horse, right? So you could be able to run 3 times as fast or something ridiculous, right? So they want to do this. They've been doing this in small levels. Literally hey guys, we'll see if it keeps me on. It keeps kicking me out, but we'll see if it lets me continue. So I'm introducing the idea. Many of you already know about what transhumanism is, but I'm introducing the idea of this is a serious effort from major heads of states, technology companies, think tanks, scientific based genetic splicing companies. High-powered profile people all across the world, wealthy elites. They believe that this is the future. All it is the past. It's just the Nephilim of the past with the mixed chimeras and the mixing of species, a different type of Nephilim than just a giant. It's a mixture of species. So it's the same concept. It's the basically humanity being tricked with the same trick that they were before the flood. And it's just part of the occult. It's to mix the species together. So this guy, what's unique about it, a lot of people have heard of transhumanism. I've talked about it on the channel a few times previously. This particular guy, though, this Ray Kurzweil, he's one of the main proponents of transhumanism to the degree where he's one of the main researchers and pushers of what's called AI, artificial intelligence, is specifically under the guise of trying to find the singularity. And what's unique about this, guys, stick with us. Thanks for being patient, guys. If for a while the broadcast kicked me out for a while. But what's unique about this is that look at the wording that I have on screen here. All right, I'm going to read this for you real quick, and then we're going to go over some scriptures because this is crazy. So his efforts for artificial intelligence is to reach a point of singularity where you can mix. The artificial intelligence is so completely intelligent it can replicate itself as well as being perfectly mixed with mankind. It says the biological system is a natural form of technology. Let me read the title of the article. It's singularity, the state of being singular, oneness. The biological system is a natural form of technology. A simple examination of the nanobiology of the macromolecular system of any cell will attest to this. Enzymes and structural proteins are veritable nanomachines linked to the information processing network of DNA and plasma membranes. Right, so he's giving you metaphor right now as far as how the internal body works compared to computer terms. Far from being a primordial or rudimentary organic technology, we're discovering more and more the level of complexity and paragon technological sophistication of living systems. Yeah, you don't think? The creator's pretty smart, isn't he? Which is, as is being discovered, even includes non-trivial quantum mechanical phenomenon, once thought to only be possible in the highly specialized and controlled environment of a laboratory. And that quantum mechanical phenomenon is not only your RNA running at 200 million times a minute across your DNA to weed out problems, but it's also how your brain functions and the synapses in your brains are firing so fast. We have quantum computers basically in our heads. It's literally what their goal is, to create a computer that can think that fast. And I think they've done it, but what their goal is, if they can get it to actually creatively think, to problem solve in a way where it can become actually considered sentient. That's what artificial intelligence is striving to do. So it says, reciprocally, soon our technologies will become living systems, particularly through nanotechnology, which is being accomplished through reverse engineering and hybridization with biomolecules. There's that word, guys, particularly DNA. Hybridization, this means changing your DNA. This is exactly what we read from 1 Enoch 7, Jubilee 6, and Genesis 6. Is changing your DNA, and our general artificial intelligence is machine sentience. Following this parallelization of biology with technology, we can examine how humanity as a technological superorganism is undergoing a period of punctuated speciation and evolutionary transformation of both our inner and outer world. Humanity possesses a unique characteristic amongst our co-inhabitants of planet Earth. There's a bunch of lies in one sentence. In that we utilize technologies to record and transmit information to progeny beyond what's naturally transmitted by the molecular genome. He's just basically saying we can write books and pass information on to our kids instead of just our bodies hereditarily passing it on through genetics. Last paragraph, he says, in his book, The Singularity is Near, futurist Ray Kurzweil examines how the geometric exponential increase in human collective knowledge, as well as the emergence of strong artificial intelligence and advanced nanotechnological capabilities, is seemingly leading to an inevitable point of fundamentally transforming the human species. The Kurzweilian singularity being nothing short of a form of technological transcendence beyond the putative limitations of the biological systems. Those putative limitations, which he just said was incredibly complex, even to the point of having a quantum mechanical processing. It's hilarious, the contradiction there. But anyway, the point is, this is their mindset, guys. Their definition of a singularity is merging man with machine perfectly and also having AI to the point where it can replicate itself. We're not talking quite Terminator at this point, but some people are scared that it would go that direction. But let's look at what the Father calls oneness and singleness, because the Father has something to say on this topic. Did you guys know that? We're going to look at it here. Let me actually read this first. I forgot I had this slide in here because this is to let you know what the military is doing with this idea, and then we're going to jump to some scriptures real quick. So this is from the AI Singularity and Growing Risk of Surprise. That's always not a good title. Lessons from the IDF, that's the Israeli Defense Forces, Strategic and Operational Learning Processes. This is written by Meir Finkel, and it was published in the National Defense University Press. A piece of the article says, there's no doubt that AI will have an influence on war, and therefore on how military organizations develop in order to utilize AI and negate its use by adversaries. It may be that due to differences in military cultures and norms, non-Western militaries will have fewer constraints in weaponizing and employing such emerging technologies. Rapid learning cycles, both of force design, operational concepts, and wartime lessons, will be of great benefit to military organizations that want to thrive in an AI-dominated environment, especially if they lag in the introduction of AI. Although based on its unique civilian and military culture, the practices that the IDF developed in recent years in the field of learning mechanisms to better engage its rapidly transforming adversaries may aid other militaries in thinking about the necessary changes to better prepare for the day AI singularity is achieved. Some of these chances may be at the very heart of military culture. So not only are they worried that it could get out of hand, but they want to figure out how to interact with it. Jeremiah 32 and 39. You guys didn't know that the Father talked about singularity, did he? Obviously, we know that Yeshua claimed he's one with the Father. What kind of oneness are we talking about? No, it's not Trinitarianism, guys. Kick the Catholic doctrines to the curb, man. Look up the definitions of these words. It's to be one, united in heart and purpose. We can see that definition all throughout the Old Testament. Jeremiah 32, 39. And I will give them one heart and one way. Some translations say singleness. That they may fear me forever for the good of them and of their children after them. Well, what is the way that he would give us? What is this heart that he would give us? A circumcised heart that does his ways, his commandments, his Torah. This is what he promises us in Jeremiah chapter 30, verses 5 through 9. Also in Ezekiel chapter 36 and 37. He's going to give us his laws, his statutes, he's going to put them in our hearts. This is the way that he gives us. This is his way and his heart. This is oneness. He offers the Father's version of oneness that leads to peace on earth. The world's version of oneness leads to fear, paranoia, suspicion, merging yourself with a machine, and more than likely mass genocide and warfare. The Father's version of oneness and singleness leads to love, peace on earth, and having a good time with your Creator. He goes on, there's further examples. 2 Chronicles 30, verse 12. Hezekiah is praying over the people at Passover, and he prays, also in Judah, the hand of God was to give them one heart, that singleness, to do the commandment of the king and of the princess by the word of the Lord. This is just a part of his prayer, or it's just a part of the lead up to what's going on at the Passover of Hezekiah's day. The Father gave them the right heart, that circumcised heart, to want to come and do Passover. And they all did it in peace. In fact, they celebrated 7 extra days, which is like a revival. Isn't that amazing? Acts chapter 4, 32 and 33. And the multitude of them that believed were of one heart and of one soul. This is singleness, guys. This is the singularity that we should shoot for. And there's no artificial intelligence. We just want the original intelligence of our Father. It says, neither said any of them that were out of the things which possessed was his own, but they had all things in common, and with great power give the apostles witness of the resurrection of the Lord Jesus, and great grace was upon them. And a lot of people may be asking me, Sean, wait a minute. They said they shared all their possessions, they have everything in common. That sounds like communism. No, communism makes you do it at gunpoint. These people willingly did it out of their own decision. They could have not done it. Big difference. This is willfulness. This is singleness of heart and mind, abiding in the Torah with family. Communism puts you at gunpoint and says, don't believe in God and let me rule your life. I want to take your possessions and give them to other people until everyone doesn't have enough of anything. Just in case you're confused about what you just read. Testament of Simeon from the Testament of 12 Patriarchs, chapter 4, verse 5 also talks about this. He says, beware therefore, my children, of all jealousy and envy. That creates war, right? So instead of that behavior, walk in singleness of soul, and with good heart, keeping in mind Joseph, your father's brother, that God may give you also grace and glory and blessing upon your heads, even as you saw in Joseph's case. How beautiful. That's so beautiful. This is Simeon. You don't hear a lot from Simeon, do you? Let's go back. Sorry, I hit the button wrong. You don't hear a lot from Simeon, right? We don't get a lot of his testimony in Genesis. He's got an entire testament, Testament of 12 Patriarchs, and he's all about Torah. How beautiful, huh? Who would ever want to take that out of the scriptures? Only people that taught Torah was only given at Mount Sinai. That's who. So this is Simeon's testimony about this idea of singleness, just like Jeremiah, just like we see in Acts. How about Issachar, another son of Jacob? He's going to have a gate on the New Jerusalem. Do you guys know that? Or one of the foundation stones in one of the gates. Isn't that beautiful? This dude understood singleness as well. He says, keep therefore, chapter 5, verse 1 through 2, keep therefore, my children, the law of God, and get singleness. Walk in guilelessness. So do not walk in deceit and wickedness. Instead, walk in singleness. It says, do not play the busybody with the business of your neighbor, but love the Lord and your neighbor. Have compassion on the poor and the weak. Oh my gosh, this dude's speaking Leviticus 19, 17, and 18. Love your neighbors, you love yourself. And Deuteronomy 6:5, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. This is singleness. This is the Father's version of oneness. To be united in heart and purpose. It means you have a circumcised heart and your actions are abiding in the behavior of the Father. How about the Testament of Asher? This brother had something to say as well. Chapter 6, verse 1, take heed, therefore, you also, my children, to the commandments of the Lord, following the truth with singleness of face. How beautiful. All right, guys, back to the bad guys. I'm sorry. We got to mix it up, right? We got to show you a little bit of the truth of the Father and explain to you what's going on in this crazy world. This dude's a former Google and Uber engineer. He's a computer programmer. That's what all that means. And he registered a new church with the IRS whose stated goal is to develop and promote the realization of a Godhead based on artificial intelligence. This new religion, which anticipates advanced machines ruling over humanity as gods, has more support in the Silicon Valley community than many may think. And it lines up with one of the most stunning prophecies of the book of Revelation. Guys, this is Anthony Lewandowski. He's the founder of the Way of the Future Church, and he wants to spread the gospel, air quotes, of a coming computer god. Interesting. Revelation 13, 11 through 17. I'll make this a little bit bigger for you. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the sea. He had 2 horns like a lamb. He spoke as a dragon. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he does great wonders. That's the second beast, does great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles, which he had power to do in the sight of the first beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the first beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power, the second beast had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save that he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. A lot of people always love to ask me, Sean, what do you think about the mark of the beast? What is it? Is it vaccines? Is it the chip? Is it keeping the Sabbath or not? And I don't know if you guys watched the roundtable we did with our brothers, Jared and Mikey and West Blaze, about 2-3 weeks ago. But it was like 4.5 hours. We talked about the mark of the beast. Go watch it if you haven't seen it. But you'll hear me. I'm going to give you a 1-sentence summary is what I said for 4.5 hours in that other video, which is essentially, guys, the mark of the beast doesn't show up until the second beast shows up. Just that simple. So I don't think it's here yet because the first beast hasn't showed up. So the second beast can't show up yet. Does that make any sense? That's why they're given these terms of succession. First beast shows up, then the second beast shows up. The second beast is the one that creates this mark and forces people to take it. He also, in the discussion and the topic of artificial intelligence, creates what I think is the application of the artificial intelligence, which is he creates an image of the beast and gives life unto it. So then it can now speak and kill people if it wants to. And guys, to me personally, this is something I've seen in historical research in Egyptian literature where it talks about the Eye of Ra. And I'm going to go into that in greater depth in future episodes. Literally in the 7 episodes of the future, when we investigate Babylon as far as what's going to go on in the future, I'm going to go into this chapter in greater depth with historical parallels to the Eye of Ra from ancient Egypt. So this is the second beast. It's all the timing, and it happens within 42 months of Yeshua returning. I don't think that we're there yet. I don't think we've seen the first beast come on the scene, and he's not making war against the nations, and the second beast isn't here either. So I don't think we should go around just calling every new concept the mark of the beast. All right, guys. And if you also want to go into who I think the first beast is, so you can have that point of context for that 42 months I just mentioned. Remember, the first beast has to show before the second beast shows up. I would suggest checking out part 7 of this series, The King of Babylon. I go into all the scriptures, great explanation on that. Hopefully it blesses you. Child sacrifice, making the love grow cold. You guys remember Yeshua promises us that in the end of days, the end of the age, that the love of many will go cold because of lawlessness. Why? 100% child sacrifice is lawlessness. Smiting the embryo in the womb. We're going to go over the scriptures here in a minute. It's literally in Deuteronomy as well as in Enoch. And I'm going to give you historical references to the biblical days where they literally spoke the words abortion. But child sacrifice, guys, this has been practiced since the rebellious angels from before the flood, and it makes the love grow cold. If you're at an outdoor, open, public ritual where they're practicing Baal worship, and they do the process that they would commonly do for this process to create the moment of drinking blood, to which they use the children many occasions, then you're going to see something horrific that's going to shock you, and you have to make a choice at that point. You either have to fight against what you see and make them stop, create justice, or you have to let it persist and take part to the degree. I mean, I'm giving you a scenario. If you were, grew up, in the land of the Hittites back, 3,000 years ago, and this is the reality that you grew up around, you have to make a decision. Just like Abraham made a decision when he was 14, according to the book of Jubilees, when he was like, wow, he stopped worshiping the Baals and wanted to worship the Almighty Yahweh. So you either, and of course, doing the commandments is how your heart grows warm right? How you can become not cold, but you become hot because you have the love of the commandments in your heart. You're practicing the behavior of the Creator. But specifically, as far as sheer trauma, is this concept of that you see on the screen here. And this will make the love go cold. This will make people die on the inside. I've actually seen the effects through ignorance of this concept through abortion. Two different people previously in my life that I ran into, two different women that had gone through an abortion and regretted it later in their life to the point of literally crying on my shoulder because they were in so much pain still from that decision. It's horrific. It hurts people. They were, of course, believed all the propaganda, thought it was okay. But then after the process was over, they struggled like crazy. The natural feelings came and their faith struggled, which is their love for the Father, the Creator. Their faith struggled as a result of it because now they didn't know how to deal with that trauma. To me, this is, and I just want to be open about this with everyone watching. To me, this is my understanding of how horrific child sacrifice is in our modern version, which is what we call abortion today, with sterilized clinics and accepted legally and accepted in the medical field. And everyone says it's, people try to say it's okay and all that stuff. Guys, it's a deception from the enemy, and it's literally the biggest and quickest way for your heart to grow cold and lose your faith. It's traumatic. It traumatizes the mind and the heart. Obviously, we all know about Planned Parenthood. I've actually done a video about Planned Parenthood. These two, the logo for the PP, it's designed specifically because it's the owl eyes of Molech, because they're doing the practices of Molech, and it's one of our most popular videos here on Kingdom of Context. So you're welcome to check that out on our popular videos on our main channel page. Everyone knows about Planned Parenthood, but do we know how much that abortions are done all around the world through different countries? As you can see on the left-hand side of this graph, China is leading the way with over 9 million abortions a year. The United States is over 1.3 million a year. And out of that total of 1.3, you have approximately 350,000 are done by specifically Planned Parenthood facilities in the United States. Russia comes in a close second with the U.S. And then this blue here, that's the fourth little graph. It's hard to see, but this is actually International Planned Parenthood Federation. Guys, they have a federation. Why? Because this is the occult. This is literally their main staple of practice for the occult. This is a part of their allegiance to the Baals. They've got to kill the children. This is what they do. So not only do they have strong presences in the United States, but they literally are fourth in the world and entire world for abortions through their federation, like they're on their own little nation of baby killers. Yeah, if anyone's interested in hiring a special elite group that wants to, well, maybe I shouldn't finish that sentence. It makes me mad. How about we jump into history? The Republic is a book written by Plato. Approximately, he lived during the time period of what we call the 4th century BC. And Plato argues that the ideal state governed by a philosopher kings. You guys remember what the transhumanist movement was? It was a philosophical movement, right? Who was the great purveyors of the occult during the days of Yeshua, the Greeks with their philosophy. It's very interesting. What tricks Christians today? I don't know how many YouTube apologetics channels I've seen online today. They're all built around philosophy and they don't know a thing about the word, and it's just like so therefore they're just continuing to quote these Greek philosophers or Latin philosophers from the days of early Rome, which became some of the early church fathers that pushed a whole bunch of propaganda that was outside of Scripture. I'm going too far with that. I should just stick with what I'm saying here. Plato argues that the ideal state governed by philosopher kings would make sure that women should be forced to have an abortion when the city-state becomes too populous. You guys thought that overpopulation was a new concept? Do you guys not realize that's the language of the occult of Babylon? Depopulation, overpopulation. That's why China was so high on this list. They force abortions. They're literally doing the works of Plato from 2,400 years ago. It's the same thing. There's nothing new under the sun, guys. We're battling the same bad guy throughout all of history, the same practices. Just like we need to learn the Father's ways, well, the Father's word explains to us the enemy's ways. so that we expose the things of darkness rather than take part of them or let them be just happen, right? We need to expose them, bring attention to them, create a movement for change, pray against them, right? To the point where Father would keep our minds and our hearts away from it, as well as open the eyes of other people to not participate in it. This is consistent practices all throughout history. It's the ways of Babylon. Depopulation is not a new concept. In the Didache, approximately 1st century AD, it's a collection of writings that's supposed to be attributed to the apostles, but it's been contested. Who knows? The point is, no matter who wrote the Didache, they're right on about this. Okay? You shall not murder a child by abortion or kill him when he's born. So this is their mindset, literally with their verbiage from the 1st century AD, from the days of Yeshua and the days of the apostles. This is what supposedly one of the instructions they would have been teaching to new converts during the 1st century AD. Do not murder a child by abortion, nor kill him when born. I just want to round up all those modern day pastors that are part of churches that claim that abortion's not killing a child. It's not a life yet. It's okay. And I just want to be like, yeah, well, the people that, your ancestors in the faith, if you had been in the 1st century, they would have said you're out of the faith. You're murdering people. You need to stop it. Or you're condoning murder. You need to be stripped of your position of pastor, take that mic away from you, take that fancy robe off you, and, push you out in the back alley. Because you're not a believer. You're not a part of this congregation with that type of belief set. You're very confused, and you're literally promoting occultic abortion and murder. So it's consistent. We're going to keep going, guys. This is Josephus in the same time period, 2nd century AD. It says, the law, moreover, enjoins us to bring up all our offspring. Let me read that one more time. The law, moreover, enjoins us, which means commands us with fervency, to raise up all of our children, and it forbids women to cause abortion of what is begotten or to destroy it afterward. You mean like post-birth abortion? Like it's literally a bill that was signed into law in New York City last year? They're talking about this same thing. Because why would they be talking about this that long ago? Both pre-birth and post-birth abortion concepts. Because it's the occult. This is what they would do. Josephus may have actually been in the vicinity of watching one of these rituals happen. And if any woman appears to have done so, she will be a murderer of her child by destroying a living creature and diminishing mankind. Now, real quick, guys, at this point, I just in case there's anyone in the audience that has gone through this in the past because you were deceived and you didn't know any better, or maybe you did know better and you still made the decision, I just want to let you know that the Father can forgive you. Okay? I've had anger in my heart to the point I should be called a murderer, right? According to Yeshua. Because I've wanted to kill a man one time. This is the life we live. Sometimes it's really hard. So if there's any females, if there's any women in the audience that has experienced this, my heart goes out to you. My prayers go to you that the Father would heal you of any pain that you may be enduring as a result of that, and know that you can be forgiven. His mercy is endless. Okay? So be encouraged, but we have to talk about this stuff tonight. I have to go over these things because hopefully the people that are watching realize that this is the same enemy that we've been fighting this whole time. So this is Josephus explained the same thing, that if any woman appears to have done so, she will be considered a murderer of her child by destroying a living creature and diminishing mankind. 1 Enoch 69, this is where it began. When the rebellious angels showed up, took wives, had children, those children were called Nephilim, the beginning of uncleanness. Those were the unclean spirits. And it goes into great depth. Read the whole passage of chapter 69, but in this particular part, it explains where abortion came from. It says that it's literally one of these rebellious angels. His name was Kazdijah. And it says, this is he who showed the children of men all the wicked smitings of spirits and demons, and the smitings of the embryo in the womb, that it may pass away. 1 Enoch 69:12. That is crazy, guys. It's crazy. Paul, this is why we have our hope in the return of the Father. I agree with you. This world's insane. This world is horrible. There's a lot of bad stuff going on. And this is why the message of the Bible, they try to squash that message at every turn. Every culture, throughout all of history, the enemy has tried to overtly and systematically, depends on the culture, squash the message of Scripture at every turn, because our hope is in our returning Messiah, Prince of Peace, Prince of Love, the Son of God, who walks in the character of the Father to the point where he's going to stop the wicked. They're going to be taken off the face of the earth. And he's going to set up peace on the earth to the point where we don't have to deal with this stuff anymore. How blessed with the baby that's born, 5 years after Yeshua returns. And, as a part of the humans that are outside the New Jerusalem repopulating at the beginning of the millennial reign, how blessed that child will be to grow up in a world where, the wolf will lay down with the lamb, and, the baby can play near the adder's hole and not have to worry about, beasts harming him, and learning about the Father's ways from and watching all the civilization around him learn about the Father's ways, and seeing the resurrected saints as well as angels come out and interact with mankind and teach them the ways of the Father, the ways of peace and love, and the power of the gospel of the kingdom as it flows out in your life because you're doing the behavior of the kingdom. And just what an amazing experience it would be for that child to grow up in that atmosphere, knowing he might live 700-800 years. Like, it's just going to be amazing. It's going to be a world that we have a hard time fathoming, right? Have a hard time even imagining how beautiful it's going to be. No more children will be aborted. It's going to be great. Just like some of the other concepts I've mentioned tonight, a lot of people may be going, man, Sean, are you really trying to say that weather control has always been a consistent practice of Babylon? And in case you missed it, I go check out part 2 where I go over the most powerful weapon in Babylon. We're going to talk about it a little bit more tonight because it has to do with some of this stuff. But yes, yeah, this is a big deal. And the Father knows that this is, I'm going to show you some scriptures where the Father tries to combat this idea, just like he has in the past. So it's going to be, and the whole purpose of Babylon using weather control, as I have here as a subtitle, is to organize dependency. That's the idea. You got to create a drought. You got to create a problem. You got to create a calamity so that you can have dependency. You can wipe out resources, starve out a country, starve out a nation. I mean, literally, it's part of Sun Tzu's art of war, right? Is to get to the enemy before you really get to the enemy. Now, Sun Tzu didn't claim to control the weather, but stopping a dam and putting poison in the water source, whatever, stopping trade lines, supply rights. I mean, these are common practices of ancient warfare, especially when you're sieging a city. Well, what's better than even having this to encircle a city and cut off its supply route or its fresh water source when you can literally just destroy the city with weather? The Father can do it. He did it with Egypt. He destroyed Egypt with weather, amongst other plagues, but that was some of the big plagues that destroyed all their livestock and agriculture. Father even claims in multiple places in Scripture that he has a storehouse of hail in the first layer of the firmament that he's going to use on the day of the Lord when he returns to destroy a lot of the wicked. He's going to use weather when he returns as well. So let's look here at some of the ways that Babylon does weather dependency in the modern times, right? In the present day. Many of you guys may have heard about HARP. This is in Alaska. This is what we're looking at here. Looks beautiful, but this is a whole bunch of antennas to do something very specific. And HARP is just an acronym that stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Guys, I don't know about you, but there's a few government acronyms for different government programs or agencies that make sense. This one is just hilarious. Considering what I'm about to explain to you, what HARP does compared to their name, literally think about like angels with a harp, the harp of God, that kind of stuff. Like it's just blatant mockery, in my opinion, that they would. And of course, the wording High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, like you may as well just call it. You could have given this a much shorter name. You've called it CMP, Climate Mitigation Program, because that's all it does. Let's read about it. The High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, also known as HARP, was initiated as an ionospheric research program jointly funded by the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy and the University of Alaska Fairbanks and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which is DARPA. It was designed and built by BAE Advanced Technologies. No, that's not your girlfriend. Its original purpose was to analyze the ionosphere and investigate the potential for developing ionospheric enhancement technology for radio communications and surveillance. As a university-owned facility, HARP is a high-power, high-frequency transmitter used for the study of the ionosphere. Guys, it was constructed in 1993, went live in 94, and it's been going ever since. They got multiple places around the world. I just gave you the whitewashed Wikipedia description of what this place is and this government program. It shoots microbursts of microradiation into the air and these frequencies that displaces the clouds. It creates plasma clouds within cloud fields in the air at different altitudes. I actually put it in one of my creation videos because they know that the ether, the sky that we live in is full of plasma in the air. The ionospheric talk that you're reading about here is a globular occultic globe model. That's why, I had that little intro at the beginning here, that all the globe concepts that you see are just occult fantasy images. The ionosphere, there's a firmament, okay? There's not an ionospheric level within the sky. Yes, I know people, the meteorologists in the crowd are going to go crazy and they're going to be like, yeah, there's different levels of sky and altitude. Yes, I understand that. We're just talking about, this is a heliocentric based word, right? Because they have the ionosphere, the stratosphere, the thermosphere, all the different levels until you get to outer space. That's occultic nonsense. That's not in scripture and that's not in observable reality. So don't believe the entirety of the whitewashed idea here. I'm going to kind of go through the general premise of what this does. It literally is weather control. It's weather pattern displacement through shooting microbursts of radiation into the air. These are all the through independent researchers. They've come together within a concentric map of the world where all different HARP locations have been placed around the plane of the Earth, different countries. So this is, you're like, Sean, but you talking about weather control? They would need that, weather just doesn't start in the United States and then end in the United States. They would need it all over the world. Yeah, that's what we're looking on screen. All over the world. So this is kind of an up-close look of the actual devices, the actual antennas of the HARP program. There's a lot of them, and they're big. And yes, they can absolutely affect weather. Literally the point of creating plasma clouds, which are beautiful to look at, but they're, it's a perversion of the cloud. It's not normal. You would see it in high frequency, electrical thunderstorms, but this is not the purpose. That's just an offshoot of the plasma discharge from these, like you read from the description. They're high frequency antennas putting out huge transmissions of waves into the upper atmosphere. So guys, if you are not familiar with the transmission of that type of energy into the atmosphere, you're counteracting the natural energy that comes from the firmament into the atmosphere that causes the atmospheric pressure gradient, which is 100% affected by electrical impulses as well as magnetism that messes with the hydrostatic pressure gradient of the atmosphere. So this is a manipulation of that natural process, which is why it can move around and or dissipate and create weather patterns, which is why they're putting them all over the world. This is weather control, guys. This is weather control. So here's the actual antenna itself of the transmitter. And I always thought this was weird, but then, because I knew about this, I've probably known about HARP since the mid 2000s, right? Because I'm a nerd. I research this kind of stuff. So, but it wasn't until probably 2014 when I was researching more stuff about ancient Egypt and different concepts, and and then doing this series, you start to realize, wait a minute, those antennas, they kind of look familiar. You guys remember part 2 of the series where we go over the Vajras and how Zeus was always pictured with the Vajra, and Zeus is the god of thunder and lightning, controls the weather. You guys remember? This is what it looked like in his hand. It's got the centerpiece that comes up, and there's the pieces, the 4 pieces that come out on the sides of it. Same thing with ancient India from Lord Indra. He also had a Vajra in his hand in much of his depictions. The metallic stick, the centerpiece with the 4 pieces that come out of the other side of it. This is the Vajra. And the word Vajra is actually an ancient Indian word from the Sanskrit, and it means to control the weather, but also it literally says in its descriptions it was used to control flying machines as well. That would make perfect sense if it's shooting transmissions of energy. That's all your remote control does. So they just built a remote control with advanced Babylonian tech from the early days, where they can literally control the weather, or they can control ancient flying machines, as we talked about in part 4 of this, and also in part 2. This is some pieces found of Vajras that have been created over time. Now, these particular relics that were found, we have on screen here, I don't think that these were the actual Vajras. Like, I don't think that you could try to like disassemble these and realize that there's some sort of circuitry or something involved in that. I think these were just relics made by the cultures that worship those gods, and they knew what this was a weapon of those gods, and so then they would make one of these relics as a part of their religion. But this was a depiction, as you can see, there's a center point that comes up through them, and then you've got the other pieces that stick out as very much like the antennas. And of course, I cover this in part 2. Please go back and check the playlist if you want to go watch. And I go into that in great depth. It's the most powerful weapon in Babylon, and they still have it. They still have it, guys. It's they still have it. Revelation 11, 3-6. And I will give power to my 2 witnesses. They'll prophesy 1,203 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 candlesticks standing before the God of the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceeds out of their mouth and devours their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have power to shut heaven. That's huge, guys. That it rain not in the days of their prophecy. And have power over waters to turn them blood and to smite the earth with all plagues as often as they will. Just like Elijah, right? He had the power to pray and stop the rain for 3.5 years during the days of Ahab and Jezebel. 1 Kings chapter 14-19. These 2 prophets, considered the witnesses of God, who are in Jerusalem for 42 months leading up to Yeshua's return. They're also going to be prophesying, and people try to stop them and kill them, but they're actually going to have the ability to have weather control. They can stop the rain if they want. That's crazy, guys. So the point is, when the enemy is trying to do weather control for the point of organizing dependency, and the Father sends 2 of his witnesses who also have weather control, what are we doing? What is the enemy doing here? The enemy is trying to create technology just like they always have, because the enemy knows how the Father can use these concepts. Remember, the enemy's practices of Babylon, they're the opposite of the Father's. So the Father says life begins at conception, and raise all your children, don't hurt them. The enemy is like, well, we're going to hurt them in a variety of ways. Sometimes even before they come out of the womb, we're going to hurt them. And guys, I apologize. I said I was going to show you them, but I didn't show you them. You don't need to see them. They're sharp tools the Romans used for abortion. You don't need to see them. I forgot that I had them on a different slide, and I didn't put that slide in here. But you don't need to see them. You get the idea. But the whole point of all these different practices we've talked about, authoritarian collectivism, authoritarianistic collectivism, communism, basically, warfare, genetic manipulation, which is sorcery, destroying the body with different poisons as a part of that genetic manipulation, abortion and weather control. These main concepts here, these are the consistent practices throughout history, where the Father is like, look, I'm an authority, and I would like for you to believe in my authority, which is his name, right? To worship my name, to show obedience to the name of God. This is what Yahweh asks of us in the covenant. He says, and I got these rules I need you to follow, but it's upon your own choice. If you don't do it, then, well, you're going to suffer consequences for, doing unrighteous behavior. But this is the only way there is to be, and to do it with good consequence. And I'm asking you to do this and come into covenant with me, and then I'll give you eternal life. If once you get through this life, I'll raise you to eternal life afterwards if you show me that you're willing to be in covenant with me. It's very simple. And of course, that whole process is made possible through his Son. I'm not discounting Yeshua. That's a different conversation. So I'm giving you a simplified idea here of the difference between authoritarian collectivism, that the way the world does it, which kills people, encroaches on their rights, encroaches on their freedoms, wants to control their thoughts, wants to literally systematically round them up and kill them, versus the Father, which wants you to flourish, to grow, that to do his behavior so it's good with you, so that you fill the earth and prosper. Same concept, two different applications. One's perverse and perverted. Father uses warfare, doesn't he? In fact, he uses weather control sometimes with his warfare. But he does it to stop the wicked. That's why he has an entire army of angels. One of the most famous names in Scripture is the Lord of hosts, Jehovah Sabaoth, the Lord of armies. See what I'm saying? So we got the Father. He wants all life is precious. He wants you to do his ways so that you reproduce and prosper, fill the earth with goodness. He has these mechanisms at play, right? He doesn't want you to mix your seeds. He doesn't want you to cross species things, right? To change your orders, the original order that you were created in. He doesn't want you to do that. Part of that changing that order is the drinking blood. So all these 5 major components of Babylon that they try to do, that they've been doing throughout all the time, they're just perverting the ways of the Father. So this is why here we go. This is why when I made this is why I made this like this. Sorry guys, 1 second. So this is why I made this, to show, the most famous, 5-pointed star of the enemy, of witchcraft, and of the symbolism of the Baphomet, of the goat head. Well, there's 5 points because these are the 5 major concepts that the enemy's used and perverted from the Father to destroy mankind, or to get mankind to destroy itself. This is wickedness. It's the practices of Babylon.